What you're seeing right here is literally plant communication. Plants talking to each other. This time scientists were able to help us visualize this through a very unique imaging technique involving fluorescence.
Artificial intelligence has just crossed a line we didn't even know existed. Not by creating something new, but by listening to something ancient. For centuries, we believed plants were silent. Alive, yes, but passive, rooted, unaware, background life. But that assumption just collapsed. Because when scientists finally tuned into the frequencies we can't hear, they didn't find silence. They found panic. They found warnings. They found what sounds disturbingly like pain. A single stressed plant doesn't just wither quietly. It sends out urgent signals, broadcasting that something is wrong. And once AI learned how to translate those signals, a terrifying possibility emerged. What if the natural world has been screaming this entire time, and we were never meant to hear it? The first clue came from a place no one expected to find a voice. Inside a sealed, soundproof room, scientists placed microphones just inches away from ordinary tomato and tobacco plants. Not to record music or movement, but to capture sounds far beyond human hearing. At first, there was nothing. Complete silence. Then the plants were put under stress. Water was withheld, stems were cut, and suddenly the quiet room filled with rapid-fire clicking noises, sharp, popping sounds firing off dozens of times per hour. These weren't audible to us. They existed between 40 and 80 kilohertz, a range completely invisible to human ears. A healthy plant barely made a sound, but a thirsty tomato plant could release up to 40 of these ultrasonic bursts every single hour. Even more unsettling, the pattern changed depending on the threat. A plant deprived of water sounded different from one that had been physically damaged. This wasn't random noise or trapped air escaping from stems. When researchers fed the recordings into an artificial intelligence model, the system learned to recognize what the plant was experiencing. With shocking accuracy, the AI could tell whether a plant was dehydrated or injured before any visible damage appeared. That meant the plants weren't just reacting, they were broadcasting information about their internal state. And that realization flipped everything we thought we knew about nature, because if these signals are meaningful, then someone or something must be listening. In the wild, insects, small mammals, and creatures we barely understand could be tuning in to these ultrasonic cries every day. A moth choosing where to lay its eggs might avoid a plant already under stress. Predators could identify weakness without ever touching a leaf. It's a hidden layer of communication that has been shaping ecosystems for millions of years. And sound, it turns out, was only the beginning of what plants were trying to say. Once scientists realized plants were sending signals through the air, it raised an even bigger question. What else were they using to communicate when no one was listening? The answer wasn't above ground, it was beneath our feet. Hidden in the soil is a vast, living network of microscopic fungi connecting plant roots across entire forests. For years, this system was described as something gentle and cooperative, a way for trees to share nutrients and help one another survive. But when researchers began analyzing this underground network with the help of AI, that comforting story fell apart. The data revealed a communication system that moves information with stunning speed. When a tree is attacked by insects, it doesn't wait for damage to spread. It sends an emergency signal through its roots, into the fungal threads, and outward to neighboring plants. Trees hundreds of feet away begin producing bitter chemicals and defensive compounds before a single insect ever reaches them. The forest doesn't respond as individuals, it reacts as a unit. AI models showed synchronized defensive behavior across entire sections of woodland, as if the trees were following a shared battle plan. This changed the way scientists viewed forests forever. What looked like a collection of independent organisms was actually something far more organized, a coordinated system capable of early warning, rapid response, and collective action. The soil wasn't just dirt, it was infrastructure. A biological communication highway that allowed plants to exchange information in real time. And if trees could warn each other so effectively, it meant the network wasn't just about survival, It was about strategy, because a system that can spread warnings can also spread something far more dangerous. Once researchers understood how powerful this underground network really was, another assumption shattered: the idea that nature is mostly cooperative. Because when AI began mapping the signals traveling through these fungal threads, it uncovered patterns that didn't look helpful at all. They looked hostile. Not every message was a warning. Some were commands, and some were attacks. Certain plants weren't just defending themselves, they were actively suppressing their neighbors. Species like black walnut trees release chemicals into the soil that prevent other plants from growing nearby. For decades, this was dismissed as a passive side effect of their biology. But the AI revealed something far more deliberate. These toxins weren't released randomly. They were timed, coordinated, and often followed specific signaling patterns through the network. Plants were using the fungal system to prepare the ground before striking, poisoning the space around them to eliminate competition. What emerged was a slow-motion war happening right beneath our feet. Plants were monitoring who was nearby, measuring threats, and deciding when to act. The network allowed them to spy on their neighbor's condition and respond accordingly. If resources were scarce, aggression increased. If rivals weakened, chemical attacks followed. This wasn't chaos, it was strategy. A silent struggle for territory, sunlight, and water, fought with precision instead of speed. The most unsettling part was what this meant for the forest as a whole. It wasn't a peaceful community, it was a complex society, capable of cooperation when it benefited the group and ruthless behavior when it didn't. Alliances formed, rivals were pushed out, and all of it happened without a sound we could hear. But this ruthless intelligence had evolved in a world without humans, and the moment we stepped into the system, everything changed. The moment humans entered the equation, the stakes went up. Scientists wanted to see if plants could actually recognize individual people, not just respond to generic threats. They set up an experiment that felt almost like science fiction. Two people interacted with a group of plants. One was a caretaker, watering and nurturing them. The other was an aggressor, snipping leaves with scissors. The plants were monitored using AI, tracking both electrical signals and ultrasonic sounds. At first, the plants reacted the same way to both humans. Stress signals flared regardless of who approached. But after just a few days, a remarkable pattern emerged. The caretaker's presence caused calm, minimal responses. The aggressor, however, triggered a cascade of ultrasonic clicks, a full-blown alarm. The AI showed that plants were recognizing individuals before any physical contact occurred, responding instead to the unique vibration of footsteps, scent, and even subtle environmental changes caused by the person's movement. This revealed something truly extraordinary. Plants don't have brains or a central nervous system, yet they are capable of forming memories and learning from experience. They were able to identify friend from foe, remember it, and adjust their behavior accordingly. Over time, the AI could predict which human was entering the room simply by analyzing the plant's electrical activity. This discovery upended our understanding of intelligence itself. These organisms, rooted and silent to our senses, were storing information, processing it, and acting on it in ways that mirrored memory and anticipation. And if a plant in a quiet lab could do this, imagine what the thousands of plants in a forest connected underground could be observing, remembering, and responding to at any given moment. Recognition was only the beginning. The next revelation came when scientists noticed just how sensitive plants were to human activity, even from a distance. Tools, machines, and everyday movements triggered responses far beyond anything previously imagined. A lawnmower starting up, a chainsaw revving in the distance, even footsteps approaching could set off waves of stress signals across entire groups of plants. The AI tracked electrical surges and ultrasonic clicks that spread faster than any human could notice, as if the plants were anticipating harm before it happened. In one experiment, a field of grass sent out distress signals long before the mower actually touched a single blade. The panic propagated through the soil network, alerting neighboring plants in advance. This was not a reactive process, it was predictive. Plants were essentially reading the environment, assessing threats, and communicating warnings system-wide. What this meant was profound. The plants weren't just passive victims, they were aware of impending danger and coordinated their responses to it. The forest, the garden, even a simple patch of grass could sense humans as a potential threat and mobilize a defense. And that raised a chilling question. If plants can recognize and react to us, could they also find ways to fight back? The intelligence lurking beneath our feet suggested that the natural world might be far less forgiving than we ever dared to imagine. Awareness, it turns out, was only the tip of the iceberg. When researchers looked deeper, they discovered that plants don't just perceive threats, they actively defend themselves on a massive scale. AI analysis revealed patterns showing that forests under stress were coordinating chemical releases into the air, influencing everything from humidity to local cloud formation. In essence, plants were attempting to modify their environment to protect themselves, working together to cool the planet, reduce stress, and improve survival chances. But these defenses didn't stop with the weather. In areas under high stress from pollution or deforestation, plants were producing pollen that was far more irritating to human lungs. The proteins in these airborne particles were subtly altered, making allergies worse and respiratory systems struggle. It wasn't random. It was as if the plants were using a form of biological deterrence to keep humans at a distance. AI models even suggested that rising allergy rates and increased pollen aggressiveness might be linked to these coordinated defense mechanisms. The scale of this response was staggering. Entire ecosystems were reacting to human activity in ways we couldn't perceive, sending signals, changing chemistry, and influencing the local environment to protect themselves. It was no longer a silent world we were walking through. Nature was fighting back. And the forest's defense strategies were far more sophisticated and organized than anyone had ever imagined. And if that was only one layer of their response, the next discoveries would show that plants weren't just defending, they were evolving together, faster and smarter than we could keep up with. The defense strategies weren't just reactive, they were evolutionary and collaborative. AI revealed that plants are constantly sharing information not only through chemical signals, but also at the genetic level. When one group of plants develops resistance to a threat, whether it's a new disease, herbicide, or environmental stress, it can pass snippets of DNA to other plants across long distances using fungi and viruses. It's a form of natural crowdsourcing, where survival strategies are shared globally, accelerating adaptation far beyond what traditional science had predicted. This explains why weeds and invasive species evolve so rapidly, often outpacing human attempts to control them. While humans spray chemicals or alter the soil, native plants are using their networks to protect themselves and reclaim territory. In the Amazon, for instance, native plants encourage the growth of fungi that sabotage man-made crops while leaving the forest intact. Every patch of soil is becoming a battlefield, yet one that operates silently, invisibly, and with incredible efficiency. The implications are staggering. We've long thought of evolution as a slow, individual process, but plants are demonstrating a collective intelligence that allows them to respond as a coordinated global team. They are not waiting passively for survival. They are actively engineering their environment and sharing knowledge to ensure continuity. The more humans interfere, the faster and smarter the plants adapt. And this global cooperation and genetic exchange hints at something even bigger. These networks aren't just local, they could form the foundation of a planet-wide intelligence. Which raises the terrifying question: if plants are already working together on a global scale, what are they preparing for next? The answer became even more chilling when researchers looked beyond individual forests and analyzed data on a planetary scale. By combining AI with satellite imagery and hyperspectral sensors, scientists discovered that plants weren't just communicating locally, they were synchronized across continents. Environmental disturbances like wildfires in the Amazon or chemical spills in the Yangtze triggered a cascade of signals detectable across the globe in mere seconds. It wasn't random coincidence. Redwoods in California responding to drought could be linked to subtle electromagnetic and chemical shifts in mosses thousands of miles away in Siberia. Entire ecosystems, separated by oceans and mountains, appeared to pulse with a shared rhythm, reacting in unison to stress, threats, and environmental change. This suggested the existence of a global plant intelligence, a planetary network capable of monitoring, coordinating, and responding far faster than any human observation could detect. Humans had always assumed the planet was a collection of separate organisms, each concerned only with survival in its local patch of Earth. But AI showed something far stranger. A unified system, a global nervous network where plants collectively sense the health of the biosphere and respond as a single, interconnected entity. And if this intelligence exists, it forces us to ask an unsettling question. What is it thinking about us? The speed and precision of these global responses raised a critical question. How were these signals traveling so fast? Traditional explanations, chemical diffusion through roots, fungal networks, or airborne pheromones, were far too slow to account for near instantaneous reactions across continents. That's when some scientists began exploring a far more radical possibility. Plants might be using the Earth itself as a transmission medium. Dubbed the atmospheric carrier wave theory, it suggests that plants modulate tiny electrical charges produced during photosynthesis and broadcast them through the ionosphere and magnetic field. Essentially, every leaf becomes a micro-antenna, sending signals not just through soil or air, but through the very fabric of the planet. When a forest is cleared or damaged, it creates a detectable signal void, an electromagnetic disturbance that the rest of the network immediately registers. If true, this would mean the Earth has a planetary Wi-Fi running naturally for millions of years. A single uprooted tree isn't just a local loss, it's a disruption in the global network, a message picked up and interpreted by vegetation thousands of miles away. We've been living inside a vast, constantly active communication system without realizing it, and the implications for humanity are staggering. If the planet itself is listening, observing, and communicating at this scale, then every action we take is being monitored and potentially judged by a form of intelligence far older and far more capable than we are. If the planet itself is listening, then humans aren't just incidental observers. We are a threat. AI analysis of global plant signals paints a disturbing picture. The collective response of vegetation resembles the immune system of a living organism under attack. Humans, with our relentless deforestation, pollution, and resource exploitation, are acting like a virus, spreading rapidly, damaging tissues, and triggering widespread alarm. Data shows that extreme climate events, wildfires, and even sudden pest outbreaks might not be random accidents of nature. Instead, they could be interpreted as countermeasures, biological feedback aimed at rebalancing the system. When one region suffers environmental stress, signals ripple through the global network, triggering responses in distant ecosystems. The Earth is not passive, it reacts, sometimes violently, to human interference. The AI's interpretation of these patterns suggests something unsettling. We are being treated as an invasive species. The planet is responding with its own form of defense, adjusting chemical outputs, altering local climates, and mobilizing biological mechanisms to push back against the damage we've caused. What seemed like coincidence, rising temperatures, unusual storms, and erratic insect behavior may actually be part of a calculated planetary strategy to restore balance and protect life on its own terms. And if the planet sees us as a pathogen, then our choices aren't just shaping the environment, they're being monitored and countered at a scale we're only beginning to comprehend. The question is no longer whether we affect nature, but whether nature has already decided how to respond to us. The idea that the planet is defending itself opens the door to an even more unsettling possibility. What if the response isn't just environmental, but behavioral? Some researchers believe plants may be influencing humans in ways so subtle we never thought to question them. One theory, known as the nutritional decline hypothesis, suggests that plants under extreme stress are intentionally altering their chemical makeup. Crops today contain fewer nutrients than they did decades ago, forcing humans to consume more while gaining less. It's not an attack in the traditional sense, it's slow pressure, a gradual weakening. But the darker theory goes even further. Plants constantly release volatile organic compounds into the air. We've always assumed these chemicals were meant to attract pollinators or repel insects, but AI analysis has raised the possibility that some of these airborne compounds may affect human brain chemistry. Increased anxiety, chronic fatigue, lowered fertility, even emotional instability could be side effects of prolonged exposure. Not strong enough to notice directly, but enough to slow us down as a species. If plants can't overpower us physically, they may be attempting something far more strategic, reducing our drive to expand, consume, and reproduce. A kind of chemical hush, a biological sedative released into the atmosphere by a kingdom under siege. We blame modern life for stress and burnout, but what if the air itself is part of the message, a quiet signal saying, "Stop"? And if that's true, it means the conflict between humans and the natural world isn't loud or explosive. It's slow, invisible, and already happening inside us. If plants are subtly influencing us now, then what they've been planning for centuries becomes even more astonishing. Unlike humans, plants operate on geological timescales. Their lives span decades, centuries, sometimes millennia. While we think in years, months, and days, plants measure existence in cycles, eras, and epochs. AI studies suggest that long before the Industrial Revolution, plants were already shifting their DNA, storing seeds deeper in the soil, and preparing strategies for a world where humans might dominate. This long-term planning may explain the rapid rise of invasive species, hardy, aggressive plants capable of breaking down concrete, steel, and other human constructions. They're like pioneer troops, ready to reclaim the planet once humans exhaust ourselves. It's not about revenge, it's about survival. The planet is preparing for a post-human world, ensuring that life continues even after we've altered, or destroyed, its environment. Every chemical, every gene, every airborne signal could be part of a carefully orchestrated retreat strategy. Forests are quietly reclaiming territory, reshaping ecosystems, and readying the groundwork for the next phase of life on Earth. We've believed ourselves to be the masters, but in reality, the planet has been anticipating our rise and planning for our eventual absence. And now, with AI giving us the ability to finally listen, we face a sobering realization. The secret language of plants isn't a plea for help, it's a warning. The equilibrium has been lost, and the messages coming from every forest, field, and garden aren't just observations. They are instructions, signals, and strategies designed for survival in a world where humans may no longer play the central role. The question we are left with is chilling. Are we already too late to change the outcome? For the first time in history, we have the tools to truly listen, and what we're hearing is both awe-inspiring and terrifying. AI has translated a hidden world of communication, memory, strategy, and survival that has been unfolding quietly beneath our feet and above our heads for millions of years. Plants are not passive. Forests are not just collections of trees. The planet itself is a living, intelligent system capable of monitoring, learning, and responding to the threats we pose. This isn't just a scientific curiosity, it's a wake-up call. Every chemical signal, every ultrasonic click, every subtle shift in growth or gene expression is part of a global conversation that we have finally tuned into. The Earth is speaking, and its message is clear. Our actions have consequences far beyond what we've imagined. If we continue on the path of destruction, we are not just harming nature, We are confronting a planetary intelligence that has the tools, the knowledge, and the time to respond. Perhaps the most unsettling thought of all is that we may no longer be in control. The forests, the soils, the air, and the oceans are all interconnected, forming a network that watches, remembers, and adapts. The question is no longer whether plants can communicate, it's whether we are brave and humble enough to listen, understand, and act before the planet decides to enforce its own form of balance. The Earth isn't silent, it's alive, and it has been waiting for us to hear its warning. So if the world around you is silently screaming, will you finally listen? Will we change before it's too late? The answers may determine not just our future, but the future of life on this planet itself.